have his winged good self. So, by using science, I'm able to determine that the source of my coughing is allergies, and that the allergies are able to hit me hardest through the nasal passages. So, in order to prevent the allergic reaction through the nasal passages, clog up the nose, and sure enough, that allows me to sleep through the night. For the most part. And when we use it for history, we're able to correct the errors and learn what mankind has forgotten, and hopefully make sure that we never repeat the bad moments in history, to allow history to repeat itself. Unfortunately, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they purposely made sure to repeat history, as if they wanted to completely mock Joseph Smith, using every single bad thing from the Book of Mormon to be incorporated in Brigham's church. And to start with, we gotta go back and correct the Christian church history. Fill in those gaps that have been long lost. So during the Roman period, there were some Jews who wanted freedom, who were sick and tired of the Roman rule. And so there were several Jews who took it upon themselves to rebel. And that rebellion sparked the war. And the Romans were far superior of a force to those Jews. And there was a great slaughter. And so these separate Jewish communities being slaughtered by the Romans were writing prophetic literature in the learning of the Jews, messianic literature, hoping for a time when the Jews would be free, no longer put in bondage and captivity. And so they wrote what we now call Gospels because of a Roman emperor named Constantine. But we're not there yet. So there was more than 4. There were many what we'll call apocalyptic literature or books of Revelation, because that's what all the Gospels are. They're just more books of Revelation. They just weren't called Revelation. They weren't called the Revelation of Matthew, the Revelation of John, the Revelation of etc. There are those Gospels or Revelations. The Apocalypse of Peter is one particular document. And along with their particular stories, they also had a creed, that went along with it. And that creed was their belief in who their Christ is of the hero story. So they're articles of faith for their individual community religion. Need to shave this. Just itches so badly. And so having over 100 different groups made it difficult for the Romans to slaughter them all. And over the centuries, it became tougher and tougher. There were monastic groups that emerged trying to experiment for them. But yeah, then we get to Constantine. Constantine devised a plot to conquer all these different Jewish groups from the Middle East. Not every one of them were from Jerusalem. You know, they got the churches in Turkey that we do read about, but there were also others that emerged. The one from Jerusalem ended up disappearing and going extinct, so that the one in Alexandria, Egypt, was the one that became the most popular. And with the Alexandrian library, they were able to write their various scriptures, because the Egyptians also had their manner of prophesying of messianic literature. And the story of Horus emerging after the death of his father to take back the throne became the pattern for all of these messianic prophecies. And so Constantine when he took over, told all of these bishops that were running the various congregations that if they wanted to be supplied with money, finances, to continue their operations, they needed to come to the Council of Nicaea. And he had told them that he had seen a sign in the heavens, the Cairo, and that he was supposed to unite them. And they had no choice but to fall for the deception. But they did decide to expel the Arian movement. It's different than our modern Arians. And so in that creed that emerged, they anathematize, is what it's called, excommunicated the Arians. They didn't call them by name, they just referred to their doctrinal precept that was different. And that was the intention, is that everybody had a different creed with a different story that went with it. Hero story, messianic hero story. Constantine demanded that they choose one creed. And it was pretty much a near impossible task, because everybody was so attached to their particular one. They were united against the Arian group. And so Constantine was forced to move things along and finish it up by designating the character named Jesus as the Christ. And because they couldn't decide the nature and character, they couldn't agree on it, Constantine created a new word. It has no meaning because he created it. And the meaning of the new word is not real. That is the meaning. Not real. Supernatural. And thus we get the Trinity to this day. And so that's why it's an abominable Christ. Because he turned a fictional prophetic character into a historical character. And that turned the scriptures written by the Jews prophesying of a future Messiah into literal history during the Roman period time. As well as many of the Old Testament stories, like those from Genesis, into literal history. And they're not. As I've gone over with you in videos, they come from the Egyptian documents. They're latter-day messianic prophecies. Which you can put Horus as the character to more correctly see how it was derived from the Egyptian documents. But in so doing what he did, he was even more abominable. Because now that they were literal history, the group now called Christians and are now blaming the Jews for the murder of now Jesus, who was a real person in history now, created by Constantine. And so this Christian group now has an enemy, the Jews, and for the next 2,000 years, even to this day, the Jews are chased around Europe, hunted down, and blamed for anything that happens to the Christians, like the Black Plague. They're accused of being devil worshippers and all sorts of false accusations. Constantine created a hate group in the form of Christianity, with Jesus, the supernatural, unreal Christ. And so when Joseph Smith comes into history, his father, Joseph Smith Sr., is a Jewish mystic in Vermont. Mystic does not mean magic. It's Kabbalah, depending on how you want to pronounce it. With the tree of life. And they had no intention of starting their own church. They had to keep a low profile, because if people knew that they were Jewish, they'd be treated like witches. Because mysticism is not magic. It comes from the Greek word, which is a temple initiate who goes through their initiatories. Sound familiar, Mormons? Washing and anointing to become a Christ, to become a God, to pass through the veil of the temple, to enter into God's presence, being as Him. And yes, Horus of the Egyptians needed to likewise do it in such manner as his father Osiris set the pattern for. And so it's a dualism for earthly as well as heavenly afterlife. To become a pharaoh, you had to go through that process to replace your father. And so that's where our religion comes from. That's what Joseph was restoring. The learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians. And so it was all about the Book of Mormon, which is another gospel, but it's not gospel. It's not another testament of Jesus Christ. It's another prophetic document, messianic literature, the learning of the Jews. Because I went over with you in the other video the other day, all the Gospels start in 2017, the latter days. Because John in Revelation chapter 12 gives us that first year's date. And then 19 is the ending date. So 2017 to 2024, that's the period of the latter days. And all the stories talk about the ministry or the events that occur within those 7 years. And so I've informed you about how the Book of Mormon got started. It's because of William Morgan found Joseph Smith in Canandaigua, New York. And there he was working on his book to warn America of the threat to destroy it, using that timeline from John to put everybody in place and then destroy Christianity for their abominations. And William Morgan wanted to warn America. And the enemy found out about him and threatened him. Death threats. to silence him. And so 9/11, 1826, a date which should live in infamy. Joseph Smith Sr. as the master mason of the lodge, and thus the one to care for William Morgan, made sure he escaped the country and took upon himself the responsibility to finish the book, to warn America. And so with his York rights, with the Knights Templar knowledge, with his Jewish mysticism, he finished the book, finding Sidney Rigdon, who was completely out of the picture of Canandaigua, New York. That's why Sidney Rigdon's the major author. They knew him. And so the original manuscripts of William Morgan was in Sidney Rigdon's hands. That's why they couldn't find them anywhere. And Joseph Smith Sr., in order to fulfill the prophecies of the latter days to save America, used his son Junior to be the front man, the founding Christ of the group that was to save America from the enemy. That's why it's supposed to be a Mormon who's the Messiah, the mortal man, the real person to fulfill it. The Holy Grail, the bloodline. And with the Book of Mormon going around, you're supposed to push the Book of Mormon as prophetic literature, prophesying, messianic literature, learning of the Jews, manner of prophesying, with the language of the Egyptians. But instead, Heber C. Kimball was one of the enemy seeking to destroy America, and he found out. He joined up with Brigham Young to make Brigham Young the counter to Joseph Smith Jr. And they joined with the sole purpose of destroying Joseph's church. And they were sent on missions, and they were recruiting the enemy, which became known as the Danites now. With every group they infiltrate, they change the name of their group. And they intentionally, as white supremacists do, referred to Joseph Smith as a Christian, and referred to the Book of Mormon as a testament of Jesus Christ. And after all, because it's coded in messianic form, they do have cause to say, see, Jesus is there. It's about Jesus, just like a Christian church. And by 1838, Joseph Smith was hearing too much of Jesus in the Christian church, and wrote the scathing 1838 history which again is manner of prophesying of the Jews, messianic literature, to illustrate that Constantine's creation is an abomination, and that his Christ is to be a Mormon. That's why he purposely chose Acts rather than Deuteronomy, so that people would see Acts as the only New Testament passage and thus do the search. Because Acts says we're referring to Deuteronomy, the man like Moses, whom everybody talks about. Isaiah calls him Emmanuel, the sun god of the Egyptians. And so the Danites were really pissed and escalated to coup the church that year. They were framing Joseph Smith, lying to the people that Joseph Smith was in charge of all the crimes that were being committed by the Danites. And so Joseph was constantly getting arrested and thrown in jail, just like William Morgan. Joseph was given death threats to be silent and remain out of the picture so that Brigham Young could fill in and take over. But the coup allowed Brigham to be the president of the 12, which is only for missionary work. It's not the president of the church. It's because Brigham took over that he then made the changes in his church, that succession is the president of the 12. He has to, in order to justify himself. But the other members had their own method of succession upon Joseph's death, as they are different branches than Brigham Young's. Joseph Smith is now in the role of Osiris, who was murdered by his brother. And thus Joseph Smith, knowing this, said that a man out of Brigham Young's church would be raised up to restore Joseph Smith's church. That's the pattern of prophecy. And so yes, Brigham Young had Joseph Smith assassinated. His Danites fled the country with their crimes, founded the kingdom of Deseret. And they've been lying to us ever since, deceiving us, turning us into haters. Even those who leave the church because they don't like the particular hate from the church, whatever it is, they still have that hate in them. Whether they turn Christian to hate the Jews, as white supremacists do, or whether they believe the lies of Brigham Young about Joseph Smith. Because to turn his 1838 history literal, that makes Joseph a worshiper of Lucifer. Necromancy, talking with the dead, rocks in a hat revelations, that's witchcraft. That's what white supremacists do to the Jews, is blame them of being devil worshippers. And so ex-Mormons are believing Brigham Young and his lies, that it's literal history. And therefore, the Salamander letter was able to fool the leaders of the church, because they've been so ingrained into believing the lie of Brigham, that it's literal history. And so a salamander talking to Joseph? Okay. Oh no, it's not supporting us. It's saying Joseph Smith III is supposed to be the leader of the church. That's what Mark Hoffman was doing, was exposing the church in a criminal, murderous way. But he fooled them. Kimball was the president, and he fooled them, exposed him as a fraud. And so the Mormon murders on that Netflix or Hulu, whatever one showed it. Yeah. That's why Mormons are so murderous. That's why Mormons are so sexually deviant with all the sex crimes. That's why Mormons lie, cheat, steal. Because the Danites raised them that way. Generation after generation. Mormons refuse to study because they're told to. Only study what we tell you to study. Because the world's science, the world's knowledge is of Lucifer. Because they're white supremacist. Everything's of the devil. Vicky Valancourt. It's of the devil. Water boy. And so here we are now. 2017's come and gone. And I'm the only one who's figured it out. I'm the only one who's warning you. And I knew when I first heard of the total solar eclipse over the United States back on November 4th, 2016 on Fox 13 News, Utah. That's what I had spent my life studying, was what I thought was the second coming. On my mission, I used the purple highlighter to highlight all second coming stuff in the Bible. Because I took the opportunity, because I had plenty of time, because of the particular companions I had on my mission, to read through the Book of Mormon and annotate it, or the Bible, and annotate it. Yeah, I still find errors like that as I watch through my videos. So it's important for you to watch multiple videos to understand what I'm talking about. But, yeah, I had the opportunity to learn the ancient languages, and I took it. I mean, I literally believed it was God setting it up for me. And yeah, I guess we could say that, but it was based on my choices. I made the choice to not marry Leanne and settled for Stephanie. And so the consequences followed. And it's been tough to break the wall that Mormons have built for themselves because of the lies of the church. They don't want to know the truth because they assume the prophets are right. And by that false assumption, their whole lives are screwed up. They apologize rather than run scientific theory development tests. They don't fact check the prophets. when they make a claim, perpetuating the lies of Brigham Young. They don't think, wait a minute, so we're Christian, but we're different Christian, that Heavenly Father is a real human like we can become, and he had sex with his daughter to give birth to Jesus. And she's 14 years old. And so this gets into the minds of Mormons. And so the FLDS church, 14-year-old girls getting married off to older men. Yeah, where do you think they got it from? Brigham Young. And the sex trafficking? Yeah, Brigham Young. Believing Heavenly Father is Adam? Brigham Young. The violence to defend their religion? Brigham Young. See, Heber J. Grant wanted to claim the true succession, and so he appeared to the United States to no longer commit the crimes of Brigham Young, and so tried to be separate from the branch-offs in the 1920s. But you can see with Nelson, he wants to restore Brigham Young's order again. They've always wanted to restore Brigham Young's order. They just went about it in a different way, so that the United States wouldn't come after them again. Whereas you see in the news that the branch-offs are always getting in trouble with the law. The church should too. They're not, because they've been deceptive. But the church as white supremacist is just like all the other white supremacist groups that all emerged from the same enemy. And their sole purpose is to destroy America and destroy Christianity. And Brigham, through his chain, to destroy Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, because they're Jewish. And in order to do so, he's got to call them Christian. Christian document, Christian Messiah. That was created by Constantine. Because Constantine's church was destroyed. It became the fulfillment of Daniel's interpretation of the Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue. The iron feet mingled with clay that shattered. Yep, that's Constantine. Thousands of different Christian churches. And that's what they intend to do to Joseph Smith, is to destroy him, turn it criminal if need be. That's why he's blaming Joseph Smith to be a polygamist. So that if it were Brigham Young that started it, then Brigham Young's church is the one that's destroyed permanently. That's why he threw in Section 132 before he died, to make sure that Joseph Smith would get blamed for polygamy. The video I did last night, again, another bombshell discovery by me from the Joseph Smith papers. The Danites purposely forged documents under Joseph Smith's name to try to accuse him of polygamy. And researchers are falling for it. CNN is falling for it. So, Less than 2 years left, guys. We have another election fraud, which is the pattern of the Danites coming up. You missed the Exodus, which is horrifying to me. The prophecies didn't get fulfilled. There's going to be no Zion. The enemy is going to win. The earth will be utterly wasted. And I don't know if you're as scared as I am. As terrified as I am. Because the church hasn't done this to you. They've done it to me. Because I'm the only one that figured it out. So 9/11 is tomorrow. It's the only Sunday in these latter days. The whole 7 years, only this year it's on Sunday, just like Pearl Harbor was on Sunday. I don't know if that means anything. We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. But yeah.